T9C, got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of JT Sports Live. I'm your host, JT, here with my NFL Week 13 reactions. I like to call this Separation Week, okay? Because I always tell you guys, after Thanksgiving is when the real NFL season begins. That's when the pretenders separate themselves from the contenders. The teams that are pretenders start to show who they truly are, i.e. the Atlanta Falcons, the Houston Texans, and the actual contenders like the Steelers and the Bills, the Philadelphia Eagles. They are now starting to distance themselves from the rest of the pack. And on tonight's episode, I want to discuss the Buffalo Bills splattering Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. San Francisco season is over. Okay, I mean, all of their star players are out with injuries. Christian McCaffrey has only played 4 games this year since returning from the injuries that sidelined him for the first half of the year, just to end up having his season ended tonight due to a PCL injury. For the Buffalo Bills, this once again is a great opportunity for you to take down Mahomes and the Lord of the Sifs and get to the Super Bowl. This is your best chance to get over the hump, because the Philadelphia Eagles, after how they beat Baltimore today, I do not view the Baltimore Ravens as Super Bowl contenders anymore. When you can't make field goals, you have dumb coaching decisions. I just can't trust you to make a deep postseason run, regardless of how much love I have for Lamar Jackson. The Atlanta Falcons fooled us. They tricked us, people. Coming into this year, we thought that it was a guaranteed lock. Atlanta was going to win the NFC South. And, you know, I made a crazy video of me saying that I trust the Panthers more than the Falcons. And of course, that take has aged horribly. The Panthers are not that good of a team, although they have played better down the stretch. The Falcons are playing for a spot in the playoffs. But that's the thing. Are the Falcons still going to be a playoff team? Because after losing to the Chargers, they are losers of 3 straight. And, you know, this team is no longer what I thought they were coming into this season. And the Houston Texans, like the Falcons, they're playing some bad football at the worst time. They're about to crash and burn. The only reason the Texans aren't being talked about more for how bad they are is because they haven't played too many good teams that can legitimately expose how bad of a team they are right now. Their last 5 games have not been good. They also had a dirty hit on Trevor Lawrence that I want to talk about. King Bryce, the Alabama version of Bryce Young, seems to finally have arrived in the NFL. You know what they say, better late than never. And Russell Wilson, look, I'm fully on board when it comes to the Steelers' chances of making it to the Super Bowl. I've been pushing back on buying into the hype, but now I just have to hop on the bandwagon. I hope there's a little bit more space left for me. There should always be space for me on the Steelers hype train because I am a Steelers fan. It's just that I just was reluctant to have a lot of high expectations for this year. But Russell Wilson, look, a lot of you guys tried to tell me in the offseason that I was wrong about him, and he's proved me wrong. The dude is balling out. This is the best quarterback play that the Steelers have had since prime Big Ben Roethlisberger. And the Seahawks finally closed the caption or closed the curtains on the New York Jets clown show. After today, I will no longer be giving the Jets any more attention unless something drastic happens, because their season is over. They now are 3-9, which means that they have no chance to make it to the playoffs. So therefore, they're irrelevant. No more reasons to talk about them anymore. Just as a waste of time. Before we dive into it, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon if you're new. Remember, you can find us on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Links are down in the description to the Apple and Spotify versions of the pod. Shout out to my guy, Darren Nolan. He says Cousins and Rodgers, two old players coming off major injuries, will not perform at a high level. He also said, I told you about Russell Wilson and we accept you back to Steelers Nation. Man, listen, I've always been a loyal, faithful member of Steelers Nation, man. It's just, I had my concerns about Russell Wilson. You know, I thought Justin Fields was the better option, but, you know, this team has overexceeded my expectations. And I think that is fair to buy into the Super Bowl hype with this squad. And we're going to dive into it a little bit later on, but let's just go ahead and lead off the show with this. The Buffalo Bills absolutely splattered the 49ers. 35-10 was the final score. This was an ugly game. If you were a 49ers fan, you probably hid all your kids, told them to go to bed, and, you know, you just tortured yourself for 3 hours just watching the Bills just obliterate you, just gashing you on the ground, Josh Allen playing around with you, throwing the touchdown and catching the touchdown to himself. I mean, after Christian McCaffrey and their star linebacker Fred Warner left this game due to injuries, I knew this game was all but over for the 49ers. And this game tonight, not only was it ugly and how the 49ers lost, but it shows how uglier things are about to get for Kyle Shanahan and company the final month of the season. They are 5-7. They're nowhere close to making it to the playoffs. And I just believe that the Super Bowl hangover, the Madden curse, has just put some kind of voodoo on this team where everybody's just injured and Kyle Shanahan's having a down season himself. This is a year that the 49ers have to take to focus on the future, reset next season, and come back to 2025 with a new philosophy if you're Kyle Shanahan. You can't keep running the same offense, because the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and continue to get the same results. He has to change something because his offense has become really predictable. I believe that's a huge reason why they've struggled in the red zone this year. They struggled in the red zone tonight against the Bills. And my last thing to say about the 49ers is just that they had a good run. They had the past 3 to 4 years where their Super Bowl window was wide open and they missed their opportunity. And now it's probably going to take them 2 to 3 years to get back to what they have been the past couple of seasons. Now, for the Buffalo Bills, this is your year. This is your time, your opportunity to take what's yours. This is your chance to finally stop the Sith Lord that is Patrick Mahomes, get over the hump, and bring a Lombardi trophy to Bills Mafia. Because outside of the Steelers, there's not another team in the AFC that I have confidence in that can take down Kansas City in the postseason. The stars are perfectly aligned for you to win it all this year. If you can't win it all this season, you probably are never going to be able to get it done. Because you got a great defense, good pass rush, you get Matt Milano back, really good secondary as well. Sean McDermott is one of the better coaches in the league, and your offense is humming on all cylinders, and you're not even fully healthy on that side of the ball. Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, they've missed the last couple of weeks due to injuries. When you get them back, imagine how unstoppable your offense is going to be in the playoffs. You're going to have the opportunity to get healthy late in the season, which is ideally the position that you want to be in if you're Buffalo, because if you can get that number 1 overall seed in the AFC and teams have to come through Buffalo to get over the hump, it benefits you because it's tougher to win on the road in Arrowhead than it is when you have home field advantage. Plus, you get that first round bye as well, which is going to offer the guys who are still recovering from injuries additional time to get back to 100%. So I'm not really surprised at the outcome of this game. I was expecting a blowout, and this game just went as what we all thought it would be, because the 49ers, with all their best players in the emergency room, Kyle Shanahan just having a slump as a coach, you expected the Buffalo Bills to take care of business in the fashion that they did. The Philadelphia Eagles gave the Baltimore Ravens a brutal reality check today. Philadelphia gets the W 24-19 over Lamar and the Ravens. And if you're a Baltimore fan right now, I don't know how you can still view this team as a Super Bowl contender, because this team is far from that. When you have one of the greatest, if not the greatest kicker in NFL history, missing 2 field goals and an extra point. You got your coaching staff making dumb personnel decisions, just randomly taking out Derrick Henry after he makes a good play. You have a defense that can't be trusted. There's no way you're going to be able to get over the hump this year. And it pains me to say that, as much as I love Lamar Jackson, but the team around him just is not good this year. And initially, with how this game started, you get out to a 9-0 start, should have been 10-0, but Justin Tucker missed that extra point. And you're thinking, okay, the Ravens are about to annihilate another NFC foe. Because remember, Lamar Jackson only has 1 loss in his career against NFC opponents. Well, the Philadelphia Eagles just flipped on the switch after they started trailing. And then all of a sudden, they just completely took control of this game. Now, they didn't dominate you. Your defense did get a couple of big stops, but just over the course of the game, the Eagles started to wear down Baltimore. And Baltimore, they just couldn't buy any points in the second half of this game. You know, before halftime, they had a pretty decent drive, but, you know, after that first quarter, when you got out to that fast start, you couldn't get anything cooking offensively. And if you are struggling to beat a team like the Eagles, who are probably the second best team in the NFC right now behind the Detroit Lions, how are you going to fare come postseason time when you go up against Patrick Mahomes on the road in Arrowhead? If you have to play the Buffalo Bills again, I don't like you to win that game either. And I don't even think that you could beat the Steelers if you have to play them in the first round of the playoffs. There's a good chance that the Ravens could end up being a one-and-done playoff team. And as absurd as it is to say that, with all of the expectations that they had coming into this year, you signed Derrick Henry in free agency, you're thinking that he is the missing piece to finally get you over the top. And instead, the team around Lamar Jackson just continues to beat themselves. I remember a few weeks ago, Bill Belichick was saying that the only team that can stop the Ravens are the Baltimore Ravens, and that has been the continual theme with this team when you watch them play in big-time games all this season. I just have zero faith that the Ravens are going to be able to have what it takes if they go up against the Chiefs in the postseason this year, or anybody else. And hell, even if you play the Chargers in the wild card round, I have concerns that you could lose that game as well. The Ravens just are not that well coached of a team as what you think they should be. When you hear the name John Harbaugh, you probably say to yourself, top 5, top 10 coach, Super Bowl champion, Todd Monken, one of the best OCs in the league, right? Well, every time the Ravens get put in these big primetime games, for some reason, I just never leave them having the feeling that, you know, yeah, the Ravens can win it all. The only time I felt good about the Ravens winning the Super Bowl this season was after they dominated Buffalo, but they just had so many guys injured. With how Buffalo is playing right now, I really believe Baltimore would get blown out by the Buffalo Bills, rather it be on the road, at home. The Ravens just are not as good as a football team as what you expect them to be for a team that has Super Bowl expectations coming into this year. The Ravens look more like a second-round playoff team and nothing more than that at this point. And it's really disappointing because even though I'm a Steelers fan, I love Lamar Jackson, and I really want to see him win a Super Bowl. Like, I really do. This is my favorite NFL player ever. other than Jameis Winston. Like, I love me some Lamar Jackson. I wish the Steelers would have drafted him instead of taking Terrell Edmonds in the first round, but it is what it is. But Lamar and the Ravens, this loss to the Eagles showed that you just aren't Super Bowl contenders. And that's the brutal reality of this game if you are B more. The Philadelphia Eagles, they got a really talented squad. This is the best team in the NFL, top to bottom. They don't really have any weaknesses. Jalen Carter, you talk about an impressive human being, 300 plus pounds. The way he was moving around, getting after Lamar Jackson was really impressive. This dude is a special specimen, man. This is somebody that you create on Madden or College Football 25. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Shout out to Attitude Pop 3. He said Lamar said his mom cussed him out for not running when he had lanes and kept trusting his receivers sometimes. Lamar got to remember Lamar Jackson. He has so much green grass and don't run. Ravens the most penalized team in the NFL. Yeah, man, it's just the Ravens don't play clean football for a team that is supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. For as good as what the Chiefs have been in the postseason, the Ravens are not even 50% of that. You know, you got to play better football down this stretch if you want to get back into that Super Bowl conversation, in my opinion. They still have somewhat of a chance, but they go from legit Super Bowl contenders to dark horse Super Bowl contenders. They are a team that if they are capable of playing their best football, they could win it all, but I don't really see that happening. I really don't. Now, before this season started, we all thought that there was no way in hell the Atlanta Falcons were not going to win the weak NFC South. Well, you know, for the first 2 months of the season, the Falcons looked as good as advertised. They looked like dark horse Super Bowl contenders for a minute. You know, they were 6-3. They had an impressive win against the Philadelphia Eagles. We all remember that spectacular game that Kirk Cousins had Thursday night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But, you know, the hype has tremendously come down for the Atlanta Falcons over these last 3 games because they currently are losers of their last 3. And the more this season continues to near the finish line, the uglier it's starting to get for the Falcons, man. With this loss to the Chargers today, you lose 17-13. You are now 1-4 against teams with winning records this year. And Kirk Cousins single-handedly costed you this game. He had 4 interceptions. He threw a costly one in the red zone. He had a bad pick 6 on 4th down. And he had 4 total interceptions to end this game. And over the last 3 games that the Falcons have lost, he has 6 interceptions and no touchdowns. You have to bench him at this point. I get it. You gave him so much money in free agency. You don't really want to rush Michael Penix in. But at this point, your season is on the brink of spiraling left. And you're at a point where it's do or die next week against the Minnesota Vikings. You lose that game, there's no reason to believe that the Falcons are going to make it to the playoffs at that point if you lose to Minnesota. Because then you look at the Buccaneers team that is now starting to get more healthy. And with their win over the Panthers, they now are tied for first place in this division with you. And you know that you're not that good of a team when the team that you swept in your division is tied for first place. The Atlanta Falcons are not a well-coached team. Raheem Morris, it looks like he's one of those coaches that everything he says on the podium makes you believe that he's going to be a great head coach. But when you see the product on the field, it leaves you shaking your head. He's supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, and yet the defense has struggled for the majority of this year. Now, they played their best football today against the Chargers. They had 5 sacks against Justin Herbert, who has a really good offensive line, by the way. And with how well the Falcons played, you know, I thought they were going to win this game. I was like, I know Kirk Cousins is struggling with the turnover bug, but eventually he's going to wake up and the Falcons are going to hang 24 on the Chargers and eventually walk away with the dub. But that never happened. Kirk Cousins just continued to dig and dig and dig a deeper hole for Atlanta that they had to crawl themselves out of, that they were unable to do so. And with your season on the line, you gotta make a change if you're Raheem Morris to get some energy back in this franchise, to get some juice back in this locker room. And going from Kirk Cousins to Michael Penix looks like the right decision to make. It's not like Michael Penix was a project coming out of Washington. This was somebody that most analysts and draft scouts out there thought was good enough to start day one for any franchise. And he was supposed to be playing for the Las Vegas Raiders right now. So if you're going to draft somebody like Michael Penix this high and you're not going to play him with how bad your season is starting to go, you know, to me, it just is a sign that the Falcons are an incompetent organization. And when I picked the Panthers to win this division, it was a bad pick in terms of me going with the Panthers. Ideally, I probably should have went with the Bucs. But my whole premise with that take was I don't trust the Atlanta Falcons. This team always felt like they were too good to be true to me. You know, yeah, they got a talented offense. You get Kirk Cousins, who, when he's playing his best, he's a top 12, top 11 quarterback. And with all the pieces they had on defense, Justin Simmons, Jesse Bates, the best safety duo in the league. You know, A.J. Terrell's a really good corner. You get Matt Judon. The Falcons looked like a really good team. It looked like on paper there was no way, no chance they should miss the playoffs. But now we're entering week 14 of the year, a time when teams start to separate themselves, and the Atlanta Falcons are separating themselves in the worst way possible as a team that they were fool's gold to start this year. They're having what we all like to call the infamous second half collapse. 6-3. 3 weeks later, you're 6-6. Right now, the Falcons, I just don't even know what to think right now. Because the Buccaneers, they could win out and they could get the 9-10 wins, and you could end up going from 6-3 to finishing 7-10, 8 or 9. And I know Falcons fans are going to say, well, JT, look at the easy teams that we played. With how bad you're playing, you can't be trusted to beat anybody, good or bad. No game is a sure thing for the Falcons to win when you gave the Saints interim head coach his first win ever. The Atlanta Falcons right now are leaking oil in the worst way possible, and I'm off the Falcons bandwagon. I've tried to be patient. I felt like they were going to be able to turn this thing around, but maybe next year Atlanta will finally be able to live up to expectations. But they might be a team that just does better when they go under the radar, because anytime you have any high hopes for Atlanta, they always let you down. And another thing is, I feel like Terry Fontenot needs to get fired. He's done a really bad job of drafting talent on defense. And although the offense has a lot of pieces, just defensively, they don't have enough. With all of the guys that they've invested draft picks into on that side of football, they don't really have too many high-level players to show for it. Atlanta, they were fool's gold, people. Before we move on, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon if you're new so you don't miss when we go live and drop new content. Give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast from, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. The links are down in the description down below. My guy Attitude Pop the third says Kirk Cousins sucks. He just be throwing stuff up to just to throw it. Him and Rodgers ain't the same since those Achilles injuries hindered them. It's time for Penix to start. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you, Attitude Pop. The Atlanta Falcons aren't the only team that looks like they're about to fall victim to the infamous second half collapse. The Houston Texans, they take down the Jaguars 23-20. They improved to 8-5 on the year. But, you know, watching this game in its entirety, I left really concerned about the Texans, because after they come off their bye week, they're going to enter the toughest stretch of their schedule. They have to beat the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Titans to stay on top of the AFC South, because the Indianapolis Colts are trailing and they're getting hot at the right time. Ever since they went back to Anthony Richardson, he's been playing way better than what he was prior to his benching. Their defense is playing well. And the Colts are one of those teams that they could come out of nowhere, sneak up on you from the division, and you end up losing your final game of the regular season to the Titans. And all of a sudden, you know, you're outside looking in of the playoffs, and the Indianapolis Colts are in because, I mean, before you play the Titans to close this season, you got 3 tough games against the Ravens, the Chiefs on the road, and the Miami Dolphins coming up. And it's hard to pick the Titans, or it's hard to pick the Texans winning any of those 3 games. Right now, I feel like the Texans are on pace to finish 8-9 or maybe 9-8 at best. And if the Colts don't end up turning their season around and continuing to get hot with Anthony Richardson back at the helm, then maybe you can sneak away with the AFC title again or the AFC South division again. But, you know, right now, man, you're leaking oil in the worst way imaginable because your star quarterback, C.J. Stroud, is in the slump. In the past 5 games that you've played in, he has 4 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. The offensive line issues have hindered the production of the offense. You can't really run the football that effectively. Joe Mixon, as good as what he has been this year, most of his big runs come due to, you know, him making a guy miss, not really due to great blocking. And C.J. Stroud, his development has been hindered with him not being able to trust his offensive line, so he's overthinking things. His mechanics are off whack. You got red zone struggles. Your offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick, who was a hot head coaching candidate to start this season, he's in the slump as well. And your defense has been carrying this team. And over the last 5 games that the Texans have played, they have not looked good. Even when they had that close loss to the Detroit Lions, that game was more impressive for the Lions to win off the face of Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions. Jared Goff threw 5 picks, and yet you still lost that game. If you were a quality playoff team, you would have beaten Detroit by at least 2 touchdowns. And the Lions are banked off injuries. And the Houston Texans, for as good as what their defense has been this year, you know, your offense has just been a far cry from what it was last year. Last year, you had one of the better offenses in the league. C.J. Stroud was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league in terms of taking care of the football. This year, he's turning the pigskin over like he's Santa. And Christmas is only a few weeks away. And it looks like the Texans are trying to gift the Indianapolis Colts the AFC South division at this point. And I still believe in my heart that the Colts are going to get hot, and over these last 4 games, they're going to win out, and they're going to make it into the playoffs because the Colts only have to play one team with the winning record their final few games of this year, and that's the Denver Broncos coming up on the road. Then they got the Titans, the Giants, and the Jags. It's a really easy path for Indianapolis to steal this division away from Houston with how spotty they've looked over the last month or so, because this is not the team that I envisioned coming into this year. I thought that the Houston Texans actually were going to be the team to win the AFC, take down Mahomes, and go to the Super Bowl. But C.J. Stroud, he doesn't look like him right now. And let me ask you guys something. Where would you rank C.J. Stroud among all the starting quarterbacks right now? Because he's not top 5, and I wouldn't even take him top 10 right now. There's 10 quarterbacks that I would take before C.J. Stroud. This year, with how he has played, he's looked more like a top 15 quarterback than he looks like a top 5, top 10 quarterback. When you hear the name C.J. Stroud, you automatically think elite quarterback based off how great his rookie season was. But he has fallen victim to the sophomore slump. But it's not all his fault. The offensive line hasn't done him no favors. The play calling has not helped him at all. And this has just been a disappointing season for the Texans. Now, they can still turn it around. If they can win 2 out of their last 4 and they can get the 10 wins, I feel good about them potentially winning a playoff game in the wild card round. But I can't see them going any further than that, just with the issues that they have on the line of scrimmage offensively. And in the playoffs, if you can't win in the trenches, you already lost, because all the teams that you're going to be facing after the first round not only are better up front than what you are, but they are better coached than what you are. The defense is great, but we don't know about the offense. Pittsburgh's offense has a pulse. You know, the Ravens offense is better than yours. The Chargers offense is better than yours. Out of all the teams that we could see in the playoffs, in the AFC conference this year, the Texans probably are going to have the worst offense out of all the playoff eligible teams. And that just shows you how bad this team has played over the last month. And their record shows they're 8-5. But you're not always what your record says you are. And these next 3 games that they have coming up are going to define how far the Texans go if they make it to the playoffs, or how embarrassing this season is going to end for them. This is make or break time for the Houston Texans now. Now is the time for the Miko Ryans and that coaching staff to come together, make the necessary adjustments so they can get this season heading in the right direction. Because, yeah, you got a better record than the Dolphins, but the Dolphins are not a team that you can underestimate, especially when you're playing them at home, because the Miami Dolphins only struggle late during the season when they have to play on the road in cold weather environments. They're playing in that cozy stadium that you have. Yeah, I could see the Dolphins beating you. I could see you losing to Kansas City and losing to Baltimore. You could lose your next 3 games and then be fighting for the division title in the spot in the playoffs the final week of the season, trying to hold off the Indianapolis Colts against the Tennessee Titans. I don't like how ugly things have started to become for the Texans offensively. It just is a complete mess. You're playing the Jaguars. The Jaguars suck. They're tanking for the first overall pick. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. And for you to just look so lethargic during the game was just really depressing to watch. I thought this team, with all the hype they had coming in, were actually going to be able to be better than what they've shown up to this point. Now, during the Texans' win over the Jaguars, there was a moment during the game when one of their starting linebackers, Azeez Al-Shaair, who comes from our alma mater, shout out to the FAU Owls, he had a dirty hit on Trevor Lawrence that resulted in T-Law having to exit the game due to a concussion, and it was a really scary hit. Like, his helmet bounced off the turf, and I don't believe that Azeez Al-Shaair intended to make that play on Trevor Lawrence. The game goes so fast that sometimes you're just reacting. You're not thinking. If you ever play football, your coaches always tell you, react. You feel me? They're not really telling you to think, because with how fast the NFL game is, you don't have time to think. You're going off reflexes. And Azeez Al-Shaair, when he saw Trevor Lawrence sliding, he probably wasn't able to pull up. He probably was already coming full speed, and he just went ahead and made the hit. And he did look like he regretted it after he did it. But, the be like this was intentional and whatnot, I think is kind of taking things a little bit too far. This is football, people. Hits like this happen accidentally. Nobody intends, most of the time, to purposely hit a player in a dirty way. Nobody wants to have the reputation of being called a dirty player. Because if you're called a dirty player, not only do you not have a lot of respect around the league, but you probably don't have a lot of respect in the locker room. Everybody wants to be a pretty honorable individual. Because at the end of the day, the National Football League is a brotherhood. Nobody's going out there with bad intentions, just purposely trying to end somebody's career or end somebody's season. You may have a few cats every once in a while, such as Vontaze Burfict, which are dirty players who intentionally try to injure guys on purpose. But Azeez Al-Shaair, he's a really nice guy, does a lot for the community. I don't believe he intended to take out Trevor Lawrence. And, the Jaguars really shouldn't have had Trevor Lawrence out there anyway. At this point, the season's already over. He's been battling injuries for the last 2 years. You're playing for nothing but Doug Peterson's job at this point. It makes a lot of sense to just bench Trevor Lawrence for the rest of the season. Let him get fully healthy, because you're playing for nothing. There's no point in him being out there. Although you probably are going to say, well, we're paying him $55 million a year. He's tired as being the highest paid quarterback in the game. We need to have him out there. That makes a lot of sense, but If the guy is just battling injuries week in and week out, you're doing nothing but further hurting him. Trevor Lawrence needs to get fully healed so whoever takes this Jaguars head coaching job can have a quarterback that they can look at and say, I already got to fix you. At least I don't have to be concerned about your durability. Because the problem with Trevor Lawrence is that, for one, he's inconsistent, and two, he's injury prone. You can't trust Trevor Lawrence to last throughout the 17-game regular season. So with you only having a month left of football, what is Trevor Lawrence doing out there? Doing nothing but just risking further injury, with him already playing with the injuries that he has sustained throughout this season. Let the brother rest up for 2025, because you're playing for nothing at this point. You got no chance of making it to the playoffs. The only thing you should be prioritizing is trying to get the #1 overall pick. Rather you want to use it to draft Travis Hunter or package it in the deal to trade down and acquire more assets, whatever direction you want to go, starting Trevor Lawrence only hurts you in terms of your future. There's no point having Trevor Lawrence out there and you risk winning meaningless games that mean absolutely nothing. And they are meaningless games because the Jaguars are not going to the playoffs. They have no shot at winning the division. Why is Trevor Lawrence out there? You feel me? Trevor Lawrence should have never been playing in this game. I thought they were just going to shut Trevor Lawrence down for the rest of the season, because you're playing for nothing but pride and respect, and nobody really has that much pride and respect for the Jaguars anymore. After Saquon Barkley did that backwards hurdle against you, I lost the small amount of respect that I did for this team. This is the worst team in the NFL, and when you're putting a quarterback that you overpaid in harm's way like this, when he's already battling through injuries, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Trevor Lawrence should have never been playing in this game in the first place. I'm sorry that the brother got injured, but I'm really sure that Azeez Al-Shaair didn't mean to intentionally hurt him. Some of y'all forget that this is football. This is a violent sport. And sometimes you can have incidental hits where you injure somebody really bad, but you didn't intend to. Maybe the play was going so fast that you didn't have enough time to pull up. It's easy to watch these games from the comfort of your living room or on the couch or in your bed cozy and be like, man, that was a dirty hit. He could have pulled up. He did that intentionally, when you're not actually on the field. There's been plenty of guys that I played football with in high school that unintentionally injured somebody and got unintentionally injured themselves due to somebody not being able to pull up in time or stop themselves. When you're playing football, you're getting into a car accident every single play. Guys are flying 20, 22 miles per hour trying to knock your damn helmet off your shoulders. You don't always have a split second to say, oh crap, he's about to slide, let me pull up. You feel me? The game just goes so fast that sometimes incidents like this occur. It doesn't mean that that player had malicious intent. Bro, why would Azeez Al-Shaair purposely injure Trevor Lawrence? Trevor Lawrence isn't one of those guys that talks trash. He's not somebody who's perceived to be an a-hole. That's just what comes with the game. And people have to understand that about football. Sometimes you're going to have incidents like this occur with Trevor Lawrence. I'm just happy that he's okay, but we don't need to see any more T-Law for the rest of the season. Ladies and gentlemen, King Bryce has officially arrived. The Alabama version of Bryce Young is now in the NFL. Yeah, it's happened 2 years and some change into his career, but you know what they say, better late than never. Over these last couple of weeks, I've noticed Bryce Young has made incredible improvements, but I haven't really been fully sold on him until after the way he played today and the Panthers' 26-23 loss in overtime against the Buccaneers. They had a chance to win it. Bryce Young was driving them downfield, getting them close to getting in the field goal range to get this win, but instead, Chuba Hubbard fumbled the rock. The Bucs recover. They go ahead, get the game-winning field goal from short range, and they walk away with the dub. The Panthers walk away with the L, but they took a moral victory in this game. because Bryce Young continued to show that he deserves to get a third year. And maybe Bryce Young is one of those quarterbacks where he wasn't going to be one of those QBs that was going to be great right away. Maybe it was going to take him being 2-3 years in to start playing good football. Maybe he could be the second coming of Alex Smith in some capacity. But Bryce Young's stats don't tell the full story, because statistically, these stats don't really pop out on the stat sheet. 298 passing yards, 1 touchdown. He should have had 2. Adam Thielen dropped 1. And he completed 26 out of 46 of his passes. Bryce Young looked like the player he was supposed to be coming out of Alabama, which was a point guard. He wasn't somebody that was going to be making all of these crazy 40, 50-yard across his body throws. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Caleb Williams. He's not that flashy. He just is somebody that you call the play and he runs your offense to perfection, because he has a really high football IQ. He gets the ball out fast. He's accurate within the short intermediate areas of the field. And you are starting to see all of the traits that made the Panthers fall in love with trading up with the Chicago Bears for the first overall pick to draft him in 2023 over these last couple of games. Ever since Bryce Young got benched, he has played the best football of his career. He's been consistent. The first 2 games of the season against the Chargers and the Saints, I couldn't even get to the fourth quarter of watching them because Bryce Young just made the Panthers unwatchable. He couldn't even get this offense past the 50 in those games. Well, since he's been the starter after getting benched for Andy Dalton, he has a touchdown interception ratio 6-3. Before his benching, he had 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He was the worst quarterback in the league. He was the worst quarterback in NFL history at that time. I called him a bigger bust than Jamarcus Russell. But over these last couple of weeks, I've quietly started to regain faith and confidence that Bryce Young can be the franchise quarterback that the Panthers have been looking for. Because what Bryce Young is an elite distributor of the football. He's a smaller version of Tua Tagovailoa. He throws with great anticipation. He has really good ball placement, and he can hit the occasional 40, 50-yard deep ball here and there, although he has average to above average arm strength. Bryce Young is a really good system quarterback when you give him good pieces around him. But the thing is, you got a lot of random wide receivers that I never heard of. Who the hell is number 83? I think his name is David Moore or something like that. I've never heard of this guy. The only receivers that I know by name on the Panthers is Xavier Legette, their tight end Jatavian Sanders, Adam Thielen, and that's about it. So a lot of the dudes that Bryce Young has been throwing to, I don't even know if they're going to be on the Panthers team next year, but it gives you more confidence in Bryce, because if you're having this level of success with these randos and these younger players, imagine what you could do next year when you get some better receivers. Like, what if the Panthers sign T. Higgins in free agency? I feel like that would be a great pickup for Bryce Young. You got a wide receiver that can win on the outside, get those contested catches, get those 50-50 balls, be a really good threat in the red zone. And Dave Canales, I had some belief in him when he first took this job, more than most Panthers fans did. But with how ugly things were for the Panthers at the start of this season, I was starting to lose faith in Dave Canales. But, over these last couple of weeks, he quietly has started to live up to his reputation of being a quarterback whisperer. He helped resurrect Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith's careers, and look what he's doing with Bryce Young over these last couple of weeks. You got to give him a lot of credit for how well he's done of developing Bryce Young, because I've never seen this drastic of an improvement out of a quarterback in season. The last time I saw a quarterback get this good throughout the season was Jordan Love last year, when he went from being a bum to all of a sudden playing like a top 5, top 10 quarterback the final 2-3 months of the year. Bryce Young, he doesn't have a lot of physical traits that are going to make you go, wow, but he's a really good quarterback at getting the ball out fast, running the offense, not turning the football over. And the Panthers got two really good running backs. Chuba Hubbard just got an extension not too long ago. And Jonathan Brooks, you know, I was wondering if he was going to play this year coming off that ACL injury that he suffered this final year in Texas. Well, I mean, he looked pretty good with the little amount of work that he got in this game today. So Bryce Young, it looks like King Bryce has finally arrived. He has finally taken the throne down in Charlotte, Carolina. And I'm really confident that Bryce Young is going to continue to play at this level for the remainder of this season and next year. I don't think that this is fool's gold that we are seeing out of Bryce Young because, listen, if you watch his first two games of this year against the Saints and the Chargers and you watch him now, it is a complete night and day difference. He was scared to throw the ball more than 5-10 yards downfield. Now you got Bryce Young, you know, he goes through his first progression, then he goes to his second progression. The ball is immediately out. I don't see him taking a bunch of stupid sacks. I don't see him running into defenders. I see a guy that actually looks like an NFL starting quarterback now. I didn't see that the first two games of this year. I mean, we might have to give Dave Canales Coach of the Year consideration if the Panthers are able to get the 6 wins this year, because this is one of the more fantastic turnarounds that I've seen since Brian Flores took a winless Dolphins team and was able to win some games with them. This is a Panthers team that coming into this year, they were expected to be the worst team in the league. They were expected to have the number 1 overall pick in the draft once again. And for them to kind of, you know, be competitive against the Chiefs and everybody else they play, you know, give Dave Canales some props and give Bryce Young some props. I'm not going to keep trying to diminish what Bryce Young has done. He deserves a third season. And the reason why he deserves a third season, regardless if this is fool's gold or not, is because this quarterback class is not that good anyway. If you can't get Shedeur or Cam Ward, you might as well roll with Bryce Young for a third season. Because if worst case scenario plays out, he still is bad or he isn't that good, you can move on from him, trade him, cut him, whatever you want to do, and draft another quarterback next year. And if Bryce Young is bad, you know, hopefully you'll be in position to maybe draft Arch Manning or any of the other top available quarterback prospects next year. Maybe a Drew Aller or somebody like that. But I like what I've been seeing out of Bryce Young. I think he's been playing some really solid football over the last couple of weeks. I'm not going to say great because all of these games haven't been great, but his last 2 games have been the 2 best games of his career. And this is the first time that I've seen Bryce Young string together back-to-back good performances consecutively. So it's a sign that this brother is developing, he's growing, and Dave Canales, whatever he's doing to develop him is actually working, and there's a little bit of hope for the Carolina Panthers. I got a few more things I want to talk about before we get up on out of here. Before we get into it, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new so you don't miss when we drop new content and when we go live. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to Sammy Adekari. He says, as a Steelers fan, don't buy into the playoff hype. I've seen it way too much. Not only have they not have won a playoff game since 2017, all of their losses were... And I understand that, Sammy. I understand that. And listen, I was just like you the past 2 weeks. You know, everybody was telling me, JT, the Steelers could make some noise in the playoffs for a chance. And I tell them, nah, man, like I got to see it to believe it. But you know, I think that the Steelers are actually legit now. And that's the next thing that I want to get into. Russell Wilson was cooking today in the Steelers' 44-38 win over the Cincinnati Bengals. Let Russ cook, people. He went 29-38, 414 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have an ugly pick 6 to start the game, but Russell Wilson has been a blessing to not just the Pittsburgh Steelers, but to the Steelers fan base, because it feels refreshing now to actually see some good quarterback play for a change. I mean, the last couple of years, we have to watch Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Small Hands Pickett, Mason Rudolph. I mean, y'all remember Duck Hodges? The dude who used to be a duck caller? I mean, it feels so good to watch a Steelers offense that actually looks competent. I remember when the Steelers used to go 3-and-out, 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 and the only time that they would score would be off of Chris Boswell field goal. But this season, though, Chris Boswell isn't the MVP of the offense. For the first time in forever, it actually is somebody else, that being Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, I apologize for disrespecting you in the offseason, all right? This is my third time apologizing to you, but I got to make this as sincere as an apology possible because you have done something that I thought was impossible to do, which is actually have success under Mike Tomlin. I thought that Mike Tomlin would never be able to get the offensive coordinator right. Arthur Smith, you know you're a good OC when you got colleges calling, trying to lure you from the NFL to the college ranks. You know, the ground game has been really effective, and the deep ball has been really effective for the Steelers as well, and that's opened a lot of things up for this offense. The biggest reason why the Steelers offense has improved so much this year is because these defenses now, they just don't have the luxury of just playing up and defending the short passes, defending all of these screens. Now you actually have to deal with a quarterback who can actually push the football downfield and throw the deep ball with accuracy. And in this game against Cincinnati, Russell Wilson led the Steelers to scoring drives on 7 out of 11 of the possessions that they had the ball in this game. He threw a nice 43-yard moon ball to Van Jefferson. He also had a nice touchdown throw to George Pickens. And with how good this defense has played all year long, I am ready to hop on the Steelers Super Bowl hype train. I've been reluctant to hop on that thing, but I'm getting on right now because with how the Chiefs have played, you mean to tell me that the Steelers don't have a shot at beating the Chiefs in the postseason? The Chiefs are one of those teams that they just find ways to win, and it's not always pretty. Well, the Steelers, they have the ability to do the same thing. And the thing about the Chiefs is that in order to beat them, you have to play your best football in the fourth quarter, which the Steelers have shown the ability to do at times. And if the Chiefs want to get into ugly games, the Steelers have no problem getting into an ugly game with them neither, because that is the kind of games that the Steelers are equipped to win. The Steelers are built to win a 19-13 game in the postseason against Kansas City. If it comes down to a game-winning field goal, best believe Chris Boswell is going to come through. You know, if you need Russell Wilson to engineer a late 2-minute drive to get the Steelers to the Super Bowl, I trust Russell Wilson to be able to do so. Why I have so much trust in this year's Steelers team being able to make noise in the playoffs is because unlike previous Steelers teams, you have a quarterback who can take care of the football. In the past, like when the Steelers lost to the Browns in 2020, Big Ben had already dug the Steelers in a hole that was too big to get themselves up out of. You know, and against the Jacksonville Jaguars, he did the same thing. Big Ben just was a reckless quarterback in the later stages of his career in the postseason. He wasn't always the most trustworthy. Yeah, he could have some good games, but he also had a lot of moments where he threw a lot of passes that made you go, what the F are you doing, Ben? Like, why are you being so reckless in the most pivotal time of the season? This is the postseason. You have to take calculated risk. And I love how Russell Wilson doesn't take a lot of risky throws that could cost the Steelers, you know, extra possessions. You know, in the postseason, every possession matters. You can't afford to have any turnovers because every team that you're playing in the playoffs is not only just as talented as what you are, but they're just as well coached, if not better. So therefore, if you turn it over in the playoffs, your opponent is going to make you pay. And when you got a quarterback that actually is efficient and picks his spots more wisely, when to be aggressive, when to check it down, it helps the Steelers defense because now they don't have to defend against a short field. They don't have to worry about a guy throwing 3 interceptions and they got to immediately come back on the field as soon as they get a stop. the defense is actually afforded some breaks and they can make some mistakes. The defense doesn't have to play, completely flawless football like how they've had to play in years past. In the past, the Steelers defense couldn't afford to make a mistake because as soon as a team hit that 20-point threshold, the game was over. The Steelers had no chance at coming back. I've seen the Steelers, even in their losses, like a few weeks ago against the Cleveland Browns. If that was the old Steelers teams that had Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mr. Trubisky at quarterback, they never would have been able to come back in that game. When the Steelers get down 2-3 possessions, you feel they still can come back and win. I've never felt this way about the Steelers before. And depending on who the Steelers play in the postseason, it could drastically impact how easy of a path they could have to the AFC Championship, because with them being in first place of the AFC North Division and pretty much running away with it with how inconsistent the Ravens have been this year, you're going to have a home field playoff game. And depending on, the seedings, you could be possibly in a position where maybe you get the 1 seed. Most likely you get the 2 or 3 seed, but either way, you're going to have a favorable playoff matchup in the wild card round. I trust the Steelers against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I trust the Steelers against Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. I love the Steelers if they have to play against Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos in the first round. And then you go into the second round, okay, maybe you have to play a Kansas City or a Buffalo on the road. The Steelers could win either one of those games because the Buffalo Bills are the clear best team in the AFC right now. But they're not unbeatable. And the Steelers do have a defense that can force turnovers and that can slow down good quarterbacks. At least they should be able to. That's my only biggest concern about the Steelers, is this defense. They play good in the regular season, but come playoff time, something that Mike Tomlin has notoriously been known for is allowing his defenses to get shredded by elite quarterbacks. I would never get the nightmares of Tom Brady out of my brain of all the times he just drove up and down the field at will on the Steelers defense. This year, though, with how much talent and depth they have up front on their front seven, really good linebackers that can actually cover. You got long, lanky, and physical corners. This is the best team that the Steelers have had since 2017. You're not going to have the same amount of All-Pro and Pro Bowl selections as that year's team, but you have to build, you have to make up to make a deep playoff run this year with how good Russell Wilson has been and how great this defense has been. I believe the Steelers are going to end their very long playoff drought. I don't see how they don't at least win a wild card game this year, and I'm buying them as a Super Bowl contender because outside of the Bills, there's not really another team that I can trust to beat Kansas City outside of the Steelers. I'm not trusting the Ravens. I'm not trusting the Chargers. Not yet, right now. I mean, who else do you trust in the AFC to stop Kansas City outside of Buffalo? I have no faith that the Ravens, with how bad their defense is and how bad their coaching tends to be in big games, that they can get it done. The only two teams I trust this year to stop the Chiefs from three-peating in the AFC are the Steelers and the Buffalo Bills. That's about it. Now, the last thing I want to get into before we get up on out of here, the New York Jets fall 26-21 to the Seattle Seahawks. They now fall to 3-9 on the season, and with this 9th loss, they are guaranteed to finish with another losing record, and they have no shot at making it to the playoffs. And essentially, the Seahawks have pretty much closed the curtains on the clown show that is the New York Jets. And what's funny to me is I woke up late today, and when I saw that the Jets were up 21-7, I was like, huh? The Jets are dominating? I gotta see this, because I didn't intend on watching this game. I'm done talking about the New York Jets, but I had to tune in because I'm like, okay, they look pretty good coming out of the bye. You know, Aaron Rodgers is throwing dimes to Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson. They're driving up and down the field with ease. They get a kick return touchdown. The defense is playing well. I'm like, oh, shit, the New York Jets are actually doing something today. Okay, maybe they just might turn their season around then. All of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers throws a pick six to Leonard Williams, a defensive lineman on the Seahawks, and he houses that thing 90-something yards for a touchdown. Anytime you see a big man touchdown, it's always fun to watch. And after that play, I knew that this game was too good to be true. The Jets were about to give up this big lead that they had got out too early, and that's exactly what happened. Breece Hall had a costly fumble in the third quarter. Aaron Rodgers just looked slow. He couldn't evade pressure. He couldn't break out of sacks. You know, Aaron Rodgers is still a capable quarterback, but he's not a quarterback that can carry a bad coaching staff, that can carry a dysfunctional organization on his back. You know, if he goes to a good situation next year where he has a good offensive line and some weapons around him, he could make some noise. He could still win the Super Bowl potentially because the accuracy is still there. He still does have pretty good decision making. But with how bad the offensive line play is and how bad the coaching is, you're just asking Aaron Rodgers to be Superman at this point. And plus, you know, Woody Johnson, with him just being a Looney Tunes owner, he hasn't helped anything. Everybody on this team is pretty much ready for the season to be over with. And why I wanted to tune into this game is because I really wanted to see what this organization was going to do once they had no chance to make it to the playoffs anymore. What's going to happen? Is Aaron Rodgers just going to quit on the team? Is he just going to sit out for the rest of the year because there's nothing to play for? Is he still going to play for pride, play for respect, still show teams that, hey, I can still play good football? Because pretty much if Aaron Rodgers plays for the rest of the season for the Jets, you know, he's auditioning for the rest of the league. Because you're not playing for anything but pride. And Father Time is undefeated. And Aaron Rodgers, the plays that he used to make in his prime when he was outrunning defensive ends, he can't do anymore. A lot of these defensive ends and defensive tackles are hauling his ass down. He just doesn't have the speed anymore. He never was a super fast guy, but he always was really agile. He knew how to wiggle out of sacks, wiggle out of tackles. He just was a magician. Now he's not a magician anymore. He's just one of those old magicians that comes up to you and says, hey, Lord Jimmy, you want to see a trick? Pick a card. Like the old cliche magic tricks, the two-sided coin. Like, it's like with Aaron Rodgers, like, okay, he has some moments where he looks vintage, you know, like the Hail Mary against the Buffalo Bills. But it's just like, you know, he's just a skeleton of what he used to be. And I'm really sad to see things end this way for Aaron Rodgers in New York. Because when Aaron Rodgers retires, I really feel like it's going to be the last part of my childhood leaving out of my life. Because everybody has quarterbacks that they grew up on. Some of y'all who are older than me might have grew up on Steve Young, Joe Montana. And when those guys retired, you know, you just felt old. And Aaron Rodgers, you know, out of all of the quarterbacks from the 2010s that I grew up, you know, watching and becoming a fan of, he's one of the last still playing. Drew Brees is gone. Peyton Manning is gone. Eli Manning is gone. I mean, Phillip Rivers is gone. The only two guys you really got left from the 2010s that were doing their thing were Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. And once Aaron Rodgers retires, I'm going to just officially admit that I'm getting old. I'm going to be able to say, you know, I remember when Aaron Rodgers threw that Hail Mary against the Detroit Lions on Thursday night. I remember when Aaron Rodgers said, we're going to run the table, relax. You know, like Aaron Rodgers has given me some great moments and great memories as a fan of the game growing up. And I really just hope that he has a better ending than what he's going to have this season if he does come back for one more year, because I do love Aaron Rodgers. You know, as easy as it is to, you know, come on here and make jokes about him and make jokes about the New York Jets dysfunction, I truly do love Aaron Rodgers as a player. And I do like him as a person. Although he does kind of say some outlandish things from time to time, I really wanted to see Aaron Rodgers succeed with the Jets. I really did. And I had this being a playoff team up until he decided to skip days of mandatory minicamp to go do ayahuasca. Once he did that, I was out. Because that's not what a good leader does. That's not what somebody who is all in does. And hopefully with Aaron Rodgers going to a new situation next year, actually getting coached up and actually being with the organization that's not going to tolerate his typical BS, he could play some good football. What Aaron Rodgers needs at his age is some discipline and some damn structure. Because he kind of is a little bit childish. He kind of is a little bit mature. He needs a coach that's going to say, no, this is the play that we called, and this is the play that you're going to freaking run unless you want to retire and be playing football at the neighborhood rec league. I think that's what Aaron Rodgers needs. Aaron Rodgers needs some good coaching. Hell, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Bill Belichick go to the Giants and he picks up Aaron Rodgers. And they just draft the quarterback to groom behind him. I think that would be a good idea. But overall, when it comes to the New York Jets this season, I just feel so bad for you Jets fans, man, because you guys had so much optimism going into this year. You had to wait 2 years pretty much for this season. Last year, you had a lot of high expectations, but Aaron Rodgers got injured 3 plays in, and then you have to wait a whole year again. So just to wait so long for this anticipation and for the season to be no different than what it was with Zach Wilson, I feel for you guys. You guys were sold a dream. This is it for this episode of JT Sports Live. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Before we get up on out of here, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. Links are down in the description down below. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, the JT Sports Podcast is available. And I got a few announcements that I want to make. So, of course, you know that the regular season of college football has come to an end. We're entering conference championship weekend. And I'm going to be having a few guests on, and we probably are going to be having more college football content this week than, NFL content. We're still going to have NFL content on the platform, but it's going to be more college football because of the playoffs coming up, and I'm just more excited about college football this year than I am the NFL. I love both sports the same, but college football, every time I wake up on Saturday mornings, I'm just so excited to watch because I don't know who's going to lose. I don't know who's going to win. And the NFL is kind of like, it really doesn't matter until you get to the postseason. You feel me? I'm still excited to watch these NFL games, but I'm just more excited to watch college football this year for some reason. For some reason, maybe it's the playoffs expanding to 12 teams, but I'm just so addicted to talking about college football and watching it because it's just so interesting. You mean to tell me that one 3-loss team from the SEC is going to get in? Who should it be? Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina? College football has just been must-watch television. If you are somebody that doesn't watch college football like that, you only care about the NFL, please give it a chance this weekend. College football is so fun to watch because of the atmosphere. The games, when they come down to the wire, it just has your blood boiling. I was watching Georgia Tech and Georgia on Black Friday going to 8, 9 overtimes. You would never see something like that in the NFL. College football is just fun. And I get it, college football isn't for everybody, but if you don't really have nothing else to do this weekend, please watch a few of these conference championship games because college football is just so much fun. And this is the best college football season that I can recall in all my lifetime, with the madness, the chaos, and with the playoffs expanding. It's going to make it even more fun and more must-see. But yeah, just go ahead, check out college football, watch a few games if you haven't already. If you need a reason to watch college football, for those of you guys who don't know, you should know, but Colorado hired Deion Sanders as their head coach a few years ago. And he took that program for being a 1-loss team to being a potential 10-win team in the span of only 2 years. And a lot of these guys that are dominating in college, it probably makes sense to start paying attention to them now, because your team probably could end up drafting them next year when the draft rolls around. So you kind of want to start paying attention to who are some of these big name prospects that you want your team to draft. And Colorado has 2 of them. Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter. You know, they're expected to be the first 2 players taken off the board in the 2025 draft. So, you know, if you're somebody who doesn't watch college football like that, I strongly advise you to give it a chance, because it's really fun to watch. I promise you. You know, college football games are some of the funnest games that you're going to watch. But I appreciate you guys.